Howdy folks, this is Father Dougal 9000 here, and welcome to the third episode of Dougal's Game Finish Chronicles, a series where I talk about the games I've played and beaten, as part of the Game Finish Challenge for the Hardcore Gaming 101 forums. There's not a lot to say going into this episode, well, apart from the fact that I accidentally overlooked a bunch of games I'd beaten earlier on than what I covered in the previous video. Now, that's not really a big deal, but I want to cover things in a chronological order, unless I have a bunch of connected games that I decide to lump together, and this was just a funny little oversight. Anyway, let's jump right into a trio of games that I originally logged on the 12th to the 22nd of January 2021. The Legend of Zelda, the Lampshade of no real significance. On the browser. Back at around late 2020-2021, there was this big discussion going on about the discontinuation of Macromedia Flash. And because of all that, I'd been thinking about maybe revisiting at least one of the games I remember playing on the old Armor Games website back on the school computer in the late 2000s. I never really went to Newgrounds, since you could easily stumble onto a bunch of porn and adult-rated games, and you defo don't want that happening in the middle of a primary school class. So I decided for the hell of it to go back to this one, since I remembered it so much that it always pops into me head whenever I hear that castle sneaking theme from Ocarina of Time, which is used as the theme for this doofy little fan game. It's a very basic trading quest, a bit like the one from Link's Awakening, where you find an item and you give it to someone who needs it, who then gives you another item that you then hand to another person, and so on. What makes this memorable for me is how innocuously strange and, well, 2005 it is. You got characters from very popular games of the day showing up, like Big Boss in Metal Gear Solid 3, Samus Aran off the Metroid Prime, and Dante from Devil May Cry, just hanging around as you do. You try to revive an unconscious man by dousing him with water and then tasing him, and it presents such a mundane activity with enough of the typical Zelda presentation with music and even sound effects on a couple occasions, that it actually feels kinda convincing. It reminds me a bit of that episode of Blue Blazes where the main character ends up watching an Ultraman fan film and gets tricked into thinking it's actually Ultraman because they use the music and the sound effects, even though it's very, very, very clearly a fan project. It's not a spectacular game by any means, but it's always stuck with me, even though it's not my favorite Flash game and I'm not even that big of a Zelda fan. For a quick laugh, it's pretty fun, and it was made by Tom and Adam Vian, who've since developed the likes of Snipperclips and Detective Grimoire as SFB games, so it's even a pretty cool footnote of minor gaming history. Polyroll for the Nintendo Switch. So this is actually a remastered version of an iOS platformer from 2012, inspired by 90s PC platformers and particularly Sonic the Hedgehog. In fact, this version of the game was originally shown off as a demo at the 2018 Sonic Amateur Games Expo, where people can post Sonic fan games predominantly, and other fan games and even original titles. Heck, the really cool promotional artwork for this game was drawn by Tracy Yardley, who drew many issues and covers for the Archie and IDW published Sonic comics from 2006 to 2019. As such, you can run around with the ability to hit enemies from any angle, roll into them, and even do a little spin dash. There isn't as much of a focus on momentum, apart from using the spin dash to bounce off nearby walls, but it's a very cool game. The level design is quite nice, there's plenty of secrets to keep you revisiting stages to the point of even including optional worlds that are as fleshed out as the normal ones, and it controls very well. If I get caught out by an obstacle or an enemy, I know exactly what I have to do to adjust, and the game responds in kind. I've only beaten the normal worlds and the final boss, but I'm planning to check out the optional worlds and see what else is there to find. Honestly, it's that good enough that I want to give it more time, so that should speak as to how much I enjoyed it. And as a retrospective edition, I enjoyed this one so much that I ended up covering it for the Hardcore Gaming 101 website, so if you want to read the article for that, it's there on the all website, give it a look. I think it's a pretty alright review, and if you want to give the game a bash or try out the demo, you can try it out on the old Switch, and you can even play it on PC through itch.io and Steam. Good places, good game. Prince of Persia Classic for the Xbox 360. This is a remake of the original 1989 Prince of Persia, made back in 2007 by Gameloft, with a presentational facelift inspired by Sands of Time. Heck, I'm fairly certain they just recycled the character models for the prince and the vizier/Jafar, whereas the princess is at least a fairly modified Farah model. This is one of those straightforward one-to-one remakes where the level design and controls are about the same, but the only real changes are slight tweaks to make certain things easier. Switches that open and close doors are marked with orange and red glyphs respectively, there's an optional sparkle that you can follow to guide you through the level, and there's even a mid-stage checkpoint if you'd rather not repeat previous sections. Now, that last bit could potentially break the game's hour-long time limit challenge, but you lose some time if you reload from the checkpoint, whereas you regain your time if you restart the level over, sometimes making that the more pragmatic option when you're more familiar with the level layouts. Prince of Persia was one of the earliest games I remember playing when we had it on our old Macintosh back in 2001-2002. Along with a weird amount of vintage computer game classics like The Incredible Machine, Wolfenstein 3D, Dune 2, the Star Trek 25th Anniversary adventure game, and even Another World, apparently. However, I was never very good at it due to stinking quite badly at slow-paced cinematic platformers. I got a code to download Classic with the limited edition of the then recent Forgotten Sands game back in 2011, and I'd always hoped to finally make some progress with it, but I still got too frustrated with some of the trickier challenges and gave up. And now that I'm trying to beat the games I've owned for ages, I figured may as well give this another shot, since it won't take more than an hour or two considering the whole time limit thing. And by the very fact that I'm talking about this at all, I've beaten it! Hurrah! I'm very pleased about that. Not only to have beaten it, but to have gotten a chance to appreciate the trickiness of the level designs and how smooth the controls are. Admittedly, some of that control smoothness is down to some smart additions from Gameloft, like automatically turning to jump grab a ledge, but most of that I would presume is down to the original. The one area I'm not keen on is the combat, which seems to be considerably worse than the original from what I've looked into. It's poorly telegraphed as to when you should attack, so getting in hits feels very random, and there's not so much strategy as dumb luck that determines how you win most of these fights. It feels very at odds with the consistent, considered nature of the platforming, and I wish there was a mode that removed combat altogether. But still, for what it is, it's a cool port of a cool old game, so heck yeah. Sod Ubisoft though. And with that, we've finished the third episode of this series. I hope you enjoyed watching and that you'll tune in for the next video. Thank you so much once again for watching, and until we meet again, have a wonderful day.